XR. Поділиться до
Раді вітати вас на лабораторії створення документальних VR-фільмів, яка народилась у Харкові як фестиваль Days. Мене звати Оксана Сигарева, я куратор лабораторії. Поруч зі мною Марія Степанюк, яка є координаторкою.
Ми дуже раді, що саме Days доєднався до її реалізації як місце сили документалістів країни. Саме для них ми створили цю лабораторію, але насправді вона буде доречна спеціалістам різних сфер.
Лабораторія пропонує 6 кроків зі створення VR-фільмів, від розробки історії до промоції та дистрибуції. Для цього ми запросили 6 спеціалістів прочитати лекції на прикладах їх практики. Головна задача лабораторії – розширити інструментарій документального кіно через залучення можливостей віртуальної реальності.
Ми сподіваємось, що, прослухавши всі лекції, вам буде легше йти на територію VR, і після лабораторії з'явиться більше історій мовою віртуальної реальності.
Сьогодні остання зустріч лабораторії. Представляю нашого хедлайнера. Ulrich Schrauth, міжнародний куратор, креативний директор та художник, який працює в галузі імерсивних медіа. Ulrich є художнім керівником фестивалю Virtual Reality Arts Hamburg, а також куратором XR та імерсивної програми Лондонського кінофестивалю BFI.
Ulrich курує чимало міжнародних проєктів віртуальної доповненої та змішаної реальності. У лекції On Display «Актуальні можливості XR-фестивалів для митців» Ulrich розповість про свій досвід як митця, куратора та програмера фестивалів розширеної реальності XR. Поділиться досвідом створення VR-фестивалю та новими тенденціями в імерсивних технологіях сучасного фестивального світу.
Протягом лекції ви можете ставити питання в чатах. У нас буде час розібрати їх після лекції. А ті, хто присутні в Zoom, мати можливість задати питання наживо. Вітаємо Ульриха.
Hello, everyone. Very good morning here in Germany, and nice Easter to all of you. I'm very excited to be here for the Doku Days and have my lecture on the current landscape of XR festivals. I am just going to share my screen with you for my presentation. My name is Ulrich Schrauth, as I've just been very nicely introduced. I'm the curator and artistic director of VRHAM Festival, Virtual Reality and Arts in Hamburg, and the BFI London Film Festival's XR and Immersive program. So a very nice welcome. I'm glad you have the time to join and don't hunt for Easter eggs or whatever you're doing, wherever you in the world are at the moment during Easter Saturday. So very nice that you're all here. I'm just going to start with a little bit on my background. So why am I actually here and telling you something about virtual reality festivals? So my background actually is not in theater or not in technology or in film. It's really in theater. So my background is performing arts. I used to be trained as a singer, dancer, actor. I ran the Thalia Theater as the head of artistic programming. That's one of the most prestigious theaters in Germany and also has a very strong focus on technology and theater. After my time at Thalia Theater, I moved on to more international festivals. I was at the Sydney Festival and did the World Theatre Festival in Hamburg 2017. And I've always been super interested in all kinds of immersive art forms. So if you're in the middle of an artwork, if you're experiencing everything around you, that's what really interested me already in the theater and performance space, but also, of course, in visual arts and filmmaking. So I did a lot of research because I thought there must be something new to this immersive technology field. And I saw a few things that really blew me away, a few virtual reality pieces, basically, where I thought, this is a new art form that's happening there, that's evolving there. And I thought we really need a festival that's really just focusing on artists working in this new media, in virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality. And this is why I started 2017, the VRHAM Festival, Virtual Reality and Arts Hamburg. I will tell a little more about the festival very soon. And in addition to Bram Festival, I'm also employed with the BFI London Film Festival. They have started a new section on XR and immersive art. And the first edition was last October. And I'm going to tell a little more about this later as well. Just want to start with a few words of housekeeping, what we're actually going to talk about, what are we going to cover in this round about 1 hour that I'm going to speak now, and there will be time for questions after. So we had the welcome already. We are looking at the agenda now. I'm going to switch over to an overview of the XR festival landscape in a second. So we are talking about what is an XR festival, what are the access points, what are the technologies used, and I will give a few examples of festivals. Then I'm going to move over to some recent and upcoming festivals to understand also what the COVID impact was that these festivals had to change their programming. How did they conquer this? Then we're going to talk, especially interesting for the artists and creatives under you, we talk about how to enter the festival market. So how do you actually, as a creator that's maybe just done your first XR piece, whatever kind it's going to be, how do I actually get into an international XR festival? Then we're going to talk a little bit about new ways to exhibit XR works and a little bit of sort of history. How did it evolve over the last few years? What are best practice examples? And then we have a little conclusion, and then there's going to be room for questions. Okay, guys, let's get started. We're going to go on to the overview of the XR festival landscape. So first of all, what is an XR festival? XR festivals, mostly known as VR festivals, are dedicated to this immersive technologies, as we call them. But what does XR mean? So we start with a little bit of terminology, so they were all on the same page. I'm sure a lot of professionals are here on this morning, but I just want to give a few examples so you know better and talk a little bit about terminology. So XR is very simple. It stands for extended realities. It means all the realities that go beyond what we are seeing in real life. And all these other formats like virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality are subsumized under XR, extended realities. So what's VR, virtual reality? It means that you have a computer-generated environment around you that completely surrounds you. Mostly you're going to wear a VR head-mounted display, so some sort of VR goggles, I would say. And you see this computer-generated landscape that surrounds you. You can't see the world that's surrounding you at that moment, the real world. It's just the computer-generated world that's around you. You can interact in most phases, and that's virtual reality. Then we have augmented reality. Augmented reality means AR, means that you still see the real world just around you, but you can have an additional layer, an augmented layer of digital information that's correlating to what you're seeing at that moment. You can either have this through AR glasses. Most of you might have heard of the Google glasses, for example. And but you also have it on your smartphone. For example, Pokemon Go was very famous a few years ago, or you have it in the window shield in your car. Sometimes you already have information layered into there, like the speed you're going, etc. That already is augmented reality. Of course, not in an artistic way, but it's a very practical use of augmented reality. And then we have mixed reality, which means that those two worlds collide. So they mix in the purest form, you still see the real world just around you, but you see additional information, just like with augmented reality. But in this case, the additional information can actually interact with the real world. So imagine you see a table or a sofa in your living room, and in mixed reality, the digital information understands these different heights and different furnitures. So the information, the content can interact with the real world. And it makes it more immersive, which brings us to one of the buzzwords. You see down there a few of the buzzwords that are flying around when you talk about XR. And I think it's just good to have heard them once. So immersion means, or an immersive technology means that you're actually inside, you dive into either a piece of art or into a film, into a content. So you're right in the middle of it. You're at the center of the storyline evolving around you, and you're deeply immersed in the experience. Interaction is something that's very interesting, especially in VR, but also mixed reality, obviously. So you can actually interact with the digital environment or the digital content that's surrounding you. And we're going to hear a lot more about this in a second when we talk about 360 films and interactive pieces. Then something that's really important is spatial audio. It just means 3D audio. It's actually how we perceive the world around us. So we hear something's further away, or we hear the direction where sound or audio is coming from. And this is very important in virtual reality because it doesn't work like conventional filmmaking. So you can't actually direct the view of the visitor. So with spatial audio, you can interact with the story and you can actually guide the visitors in certain ways. And last but not least, very important, storytelling. Immersive storytelling or virtual storytelling, interactive storytelling is very, very different from linear storytelling, like, you know, from films or movies. That's a linear storyline. You actually passively follow what's happening in the story. And in VR, that's very different. You have a lot of agency. So you can actually decide how does the story evolve. And this needs a lot of very different kinds of story writing, of storytelling. And this is why I thought it's interesting to have talked about this for a moment. Here's one big difference in different virtual reality technologies, and also especially interesting in terms of festivals, because there's certain festivals that are actually dedicated to one or the other art form. So the 360 film is what a lot of people think of VR when they think about it as first. It is actually a 360 film that's often linear, and it just surrounds you with this often real-time shot, not real-time, real environment shot. It's really basically more like a film. And you can't really interact, you can't move inside the space. So it's more of a static experience versus the interactive experiences or pieces where you actually can interact with the surroundings, with different other objects, and you can actually move inside the space. So this needs another technology in the back end, so you can actually move around in the virtual space. Just a few words on equipment and headsets, because that means a lot for the accessibility of VR festivals. So what are the technologies used to showcase VR or XR works? We go from the right side to the left, so it gets more and more immersive, but less accessible, obviously, because it's less common, these different equipments. So on the right hand side, you see obviously something that most of us have, like a smartphone, like sort of the social media smartphones. You have Facebook, you have Instagram, and you can interact with certain artworks on that devices already, or you can gain access through these apps. We have a browser PC. A lot of the festivals are branching out into more of the less immersive technologies due to COVID. We're going to talk about this in a second as well, to make it more accessible, because with this browser PC, you can actually access directly, you can make connections, you can see some of the artworks in a less immersive way, obviously. Then we have smartphones, we have tablets, we have something also very interesting. It's called Webvr or WebXR, also called WebGL, where you have an immersive experience that actually works on your browser. It's a newer form of virtual reality. So you don't need a headset. You can actually just type in a browser and then interact in real time in this surroundings. Then you have sort of the easy mobile VR headsets, like Oculus Go, Samsung Gear VR. They are not as refined in terms of immersion and technology, but they give a very nice and good impression of, especially 360 films are very well to be perceived with that. Then we have the standalone VRs, like an Oculus Quest. You might have heard it in the news. There's a new version has come out last fall, the Oculus Quest 2, where also something like HTC Vive Cosmos, etc. And the advantage of these technologies or these equipments is that they don't need a computer to run. So they have the computer inside the headset, and it has quite a lot of calculating power, and you can see a lot of very interesting and very immersive things on a standalone VR device. And the last one is a tethered headset, like we call it, because it has this tethered cable to PC that's actually running the experiences. And this is sort of a high-end equipment that you need to see certain very interactive and very sort of high-end technology VR experiences. Just a rough overview. This is also simplified, obviously. There's some of them have some in-betweens, but I think it's very good just to have a little overview. Then we're going to talk about artistic genres. So all of the festivals that we're going to talk about in a second, or most of them, have a specific genre that they actually look at. And what's very interesting in XR art forms, XR experiences, is that all of them come and are influenced from very different art forms. And it's a very collaborative experience. So very rarely there's like this one artist sitting in his room doing an VR or an XR artwork. It's mostly large teams, and all of them come from very different genres. We have a look at them. So obviously, Film 360 is a big influence on that, and has been one of the first sort of touching points of festivals. And a lot of the film festivals actually started to have a VR section and to look into moving image in a different way. Here you see a 360 camera. So what I told you before, so this is really a filming device to capture these 360 experiences. Then another genre is very strong is visual art. A lot of visual artists are very interested in the way to use three-dimensional experiences and three-dimensional artistic genres to showcase their works and to find a new way of how to express their artistic voice. A lot of you might have heard or even tried something called tilt brush, which allows you to actually paint and create in 3D, three-dimensional. So you actually paint all around you, and then you have a three-dimensional artwork. So this is one of the advantages of visual art in VR. Then we have a strong focus on installations. A lot of the artists that we work with also in the festivals that I'm involved in have a background in installations, performative installations, or more visual arts installations, and that often is a very strong focus in the artistic work. Another genre that's really important and is getting more traction since the last years is theater and dance. So a lot of theaters, operas, ballet companies really branch into virtual reality It has started a lot with filmic, obviously 360 experiences, but a lot of them are really branching out into more interactive pieces. So you can imagine you see a play, Hamlet, or another full-on theater play, and you're actually in the middle of the story. And this is what they are exploring and taking a look at. This is super exciting. Music and concerts is a very big issue also in VR and XR. What I talked about earlier about spatial audio, that's super interesting. Imagine you're in the middle of an orchestra while they're playing a huge concert, and you actually can hear the different instruments related to where they're actually situated in the filmic experience. And performance art is also very strong in XR festivals. It becomes more strong because a lot of performance artists see this new three-dimensional genre as an interesting playground. Performance art really is about the three-dimensional space, and to replicate this in a virtual version is very, very interesting. Let's have a look at a few international festivals, XR festivals. It's impossible to really give an overview of that. So if you're interested in that space, take a few hours and Google your way through. I just put a few of the very important and very interesting festivals in here. I tried to cover most of the continents, although I see I didn't manage. So one is the Sundance Film Festival, the New Frontier program run by Shari Freelo. And this is an American festival coming from one of the most prestigious film festivals, and has had this New Frontier lab for quite a while, and it's super interesting and very adventurous. I'm going to tell it more in a second. South by Southwest Festival, more of a conference basically, but they have a very strong focus also on all kinds of virtual and augmented artworks, and have an own section for that. Fivers in Canada is also very dedicated on VR and 360. We have the Sandbox Immersive Festival. That's more in Asia, and we have the Tribeca, the virtual arcade, which is also stemming from obviously a film festival and having a huge lab and exhibition around VR and XR. Let's have a look at Europe. What are the festivals in Europe? Again, there are so many, and I know I've missed so many of them on this, but I just want to briefly give an overview. Venice obviously has one of the strongest VR sections and a very strong focus. They've been running this for, I think, 4 years already. Also stemming from a very prestigious A-list film festival. Liz Rosenthal and Michel Réac make a beautiful selection there, so it's really worth checking it out. Cannes also has, the Cannes Film Festival also has a section that's more of a market place. Cannes XR also growing and growing, very interesting to have a look at that too. Forum des Images, the new image festival, it's going to be on in June this year in Paris. Then we have the IDFA Doc Lab in Amsterdam. We have VR Days Europe, which is more of a conference, but also an XR festival track. We have the VRHAM Festival, also a very dedicated VR festival in the framework of Rencontre d'Art, which is a photography festival. So it's interesting to see it's coming from another angle. We have Stereopsia in Brussels, that's just been taking place in December this year. We have the Geneva International Film Festival, also a film festival, but with a very strong focus on VR and XR. Doc Leipzig in Leipzig in Germany, LFF Expanded, the London Film Festival. Just a short overview, so really take some time if you're interested and Google your way through. So how did COVID impact the festival landscape and the different festivals in their respective background or their interest? I just said there are very different approaches to XR festivals. So some come more from a film background, some come more from the tech side, some come more from conference part or photography or artistic genres like Bram Festival, as I said before. So how did COVID actually hit those festivals? Let's have a look. So most of the festivals that I've just talked about, actually all of them, had a physical festival. So you would travel either as an interested visitor or as an industry professional. You would travel to Venice, to Amsterdam, to New York to see the festivals, to experience the installations, to network, obviously, meet the artists, the creators, and really get immersed in that technology, which also meant that you don't have to have all of the technology at home, basically, obviously, because a lot of this XR technology and some of the artworks require quite complicated technology that you not always have at home. For example, AR glasses, etc. So that was really the physical festivals that have been growing and growing until 2020. And when COVID hit, a lot of the festivals decided to go virtual. We're going to talk a little later about how exactly did this look like and what were the consequences, but already you can imagine you first of all you would sit at home and access the festival with different devices or different access points. You wouldn't be with other people. You wouldn't so much necessarily meet other visitors, other creators, other industry professionals. So there had to be found a new way to interact with the audience and with the other professionals. But it was a very interesting shift, and we're going to see how this actually influenced how the festivals look currently. And at the moment, we see a shift back from the complete virtual festival, because now we're hoping that the pandemic will allow for more accessible festivals back. And so we're really looking into hybrid models and hybrid forms. So you really have a physical setting, a physical location where you actually have your festival center where you can invite people, but also have a virtual access point to make it much more accessible, globally accessible in the best case, and give a lot of people the possibility to interact with the artworks and meet the creators. So I want to talk a little about recent and upcoming festivals. And I think this will give a very nice overview of how the festivals have evolved, how they changed access points, how they changed their curation, and about how you as a creator now can think about, what does my artwork need to be like to be exhibited in one of those festivals, and what are the challenges, what has changed. The first one, I talked briefly about it earlier, is the Sundance Film Festival that took place in February this year. The physical festival is in Salt Lake City in the US, and Shari Freenert and her team have made a very, very interesting possibility to actually access the festival. They built a complete new platform where people with a headset or with a browser could just access the world. They could have an avatar, so you actually see a representation of one another. You can talk to each other, and inside the exhibition space, there were quite a few artworks you could either see directly in the browser, or you could download it and then see on your VR device if you had one at home. We're just going to play a very short video just to see what that actually looked like. Yes, so you saw already what the platform looked like. You had a little idea of the avatars. They were very simple, very stylized. And what was very interesting and clever was that you actually could upload your photo. So you actually could recognize the other people. There were networking spaces. There were events in the virtual world. All of the filmmakers were invited, so you could actually meet them. And very interesting curation also, with very different access points from browser-based artworks, but also full-on VR pieces. The next one that I want to talk to you about is South by Southwest. which is in Austin in Texas. And it just happened a few weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, now in March. And they decided to shift this huge conference with thousands of visitors that normally come to Austin to an online version. And that stands for the whole conference. So the conference is very much based on music, on film, on technology. It's a huge playground to showcase new technology, to make connections, and it's got a very strong business focus, very different to a lot of the other XR festivals. But they also have this very strong XR curation done by Blake Kammerdiener. And they decided to go for another model, which I find very interesting as well. So they completely built their own space in a social VR app that's called VR Chat. This is an app where you can decide for your own avatar, and you can build huge worlds where you can actually interact, you can meet each other, and you can see the artworks inside, you can go to different rooms, you can have presentations. A very refined version. They did the build of this beautiful world together with VRHAM. It's a French company, and they have done this amazing, huge world where you could actually interact with other people and see some of the artworks. Let's have a look what that looked like. Yeah, as you can see, they built these huge rooms. They actually remodeled them from the original location back in Austin. So very impressive and worth checking out. There are a lot of possibilities to meet creators and to interact. The third one I want to talk to you about is Laval Virtual. It's a conference, actually the oldest VR conference in Europe. That's taking place in Laval in France every year. And they have a dedicated section for VR or XR art led by the curator Judith Gouet. And it's called Recto Verso. And they already shifted last year to a beautiful digital museum space that Judith herself built. And now the next edition is coming up in a few weeks. And I think in 2 weeks exactly. And they are doing a hybrid version. So you actually have a physical installation that's going to be later this year. And now they're going to have the museum space that they created, I just talked to you about, where all the different artworks are going to be seen. It looks a little bit like this. So it's completely built in virtual reality, and you can access it with a VR headset. You can walk around the rooms, beautiful laid out, and a lot of explanation, so you really understand what the artworks are about, what the creators were thinking. And the second part of it is that they give access points and talks and curated panels, etc., for professionals, people from the industry, artists around the theme of virtual reality and augmented reality art. And this is taking place in another social VR app that's called VRHAM. And here you see the program with very different conference tools and artists and exhibitors meetings, etc. So it's very interesting. It's coming up in 2 weeks, so check it out. So now I want to talk a little about the festival that we do in Hamburg, the VRHAM Festival, the VRHAM Virtual Reality and Arts Festival. I'll give you a short clip from our last year's festival announcement. Yes, so that's the VRHAM Festival, but what does VRHAM Festival stand for? What is a virtual reality and arts festival? So, as I said, I founded the festival 2017. The first edition was 2018, so it's the 4th edition coming up now. In June, it will take place from the 4th until the 12th of June in Hamburg, both virtually and hopefully also physically as a hybrid model. And the festival has different access points and different columns that are very important for us from our artistic team. So first of all, of course, it's the art. We do this to present new artists, to give artists a voice, a possibility, a platform to showcase their works, to meet other creators, to further development their artworks. We give out residencies. We have a lot of touch points and possibilities to interact and get to know the visitors, but also interact with the creators. We showcase artworks from all over the world. We normally, in the normal year, we would always bring all the artists to Hamburg so they can meet other curators, other artists, other creatives, and form new bonds and new ways of working together. The second thing that's super important for us is the physical part of it, the location, the live events. We have this beautiful old train track station, you see it in the picture down there in Hamburg, that we completely remodel each year with a set design, set decorations. For us, it's really, really important to framework the VR pieces like in the museum space, like an installative setting. We really build set decorations, haptic moments. So it's not only about putting on a headset and seeing these beautiful artworks, it's really about how you interact with the 3D space around you and how an installation works with the VR artwork. And also the live events are very, very important for us. We have a lot of keynote panels, a complete discourse program where we talk about what VR art is, about funding structures, about social, political, but also artistic questions that arise with this new immersive technology. And a lot of live events like an opening with performances. We have theater performances, we have dance performances, concerts, DJ live sets, all in the framework of the festival, which is around 10 days, always in June. And the third thing that's super important for us is the social interaction. I just talked about it. It's so important for us that people meet and they can talk to each other. They can understand what the technology can do. And the feeling of being inside of one of these VR artworks is sometimes so overwhelming. You actually need to talk to someone. And this is why we really wanted to do it that way, that people can sit on a long table, they can talk to each other about what they saw, and also to give everyone the feeling they're invited, no matter what their background is. So even if you've never had a VR headset on, we have all our guides there, and they really give people the feeling that they're safe, they can't make anything wrong. It's really to build a safe environment. So the social interaction, I think, is really, really important for us. And last year we were in the middle of preparing our 2020 edition. We had a lot of super interesting ideas and were really clear already about the artistic program when suddenly this happened. And it was pretty clear very soon that a physical festival was not going to take place. So we decided to use this crisis and see it as a chance, and to think about how do we transform a festival that's so strongly rooted in the physical moment, in really meeting people, getting together, giving access to people who might not be experienced with this kind of art forms. How do we make a complete virtual version, VRAM virtual we called it, that still makes it possible to really interact with other people and have meaningful interactions and give this festival feeling that I think we all love so much, and try to replicate this in virtual reality. It was a complete experiment. We didn't really know. We were one of the first festivals to really go virtual. I think we were the first one of this complete artistic festivals that did that. And we had very different access points and ideas of how to set that up, what kind of technology to use. And from the beginning, it was most important to us to make it as accessible as possible. So even people who have never had a VR headset at home, or they might have not experienced VR art before, how could we make it as accessible as possible so people could still see our curation and participate in the festival? So what we did was we sat down and thought about what are our different visitors, and we made up three different groups of visitors. So the visitor one is not so much involved with VR. They might just have like a PC, a laptop, a smartphone. And we thought about access points for those people. How could they engage with our program? The visitor two, they might have, in addition to their laptop, smartphone, or tablet, they might have a mobile VR glass like a Google Cardboard, or a standalone VR like the Oculus Go. And the third type was more like the professionals, or the people who are really involved with VR, interested in that, who actually have a high-end VR glass, like a PC, laptop, tethered headset, or something like this. And then we thought about different access points for these different visitor groups. The first access point was a virtual museum. It's called Museum of Other Realities. That is a beautifully designed virtual museum. It actually is like a Frank Gehry museum that you can walk around. You have these very stylized avatars. You can talk to other people. You can interact with artworks. And we decided to build a complete second wing to that museum, so to say, and put our complete selections in there, and we replicated our complete location that we have in the physical location that we have in Hamburg in a 3D environment. I'm going to show you a few pictures in a second. The second access point was the Magenta Vr App. That's a virtual reality app by our festival partner, Deutsche Telekom, and they've done this for years. They have a VR app where you can see 360 videos. It's completely accessible. It's free of charge. And we showcased our festival selection in their app, so people could go into the app and really see those artworks in a 360 mode. And then we had YouTube and other 2D platforms where we actually streamed all of our events, curators, tours, live opening, panels, keynotes, etc. All of that on YouTube and other social media forms, so people could just interact and see those events. And in addition to that, we thought about the people who really would love to see something in VR but don't have a headset at home. So this is normally a lot of the people that come to our festival. They really just want to try out, how does this technology work? How does art work in VR? And so we decided to partner with the DKB, the Deutsche Kreditbank, and they supported us in giving very, very reduced prices to people who wanted to borrow a headset for the time of our festival. So for 15 euros, you could borrow a headset for 2 weeks. It was shipped to your home, it was sanitized, and then you could just install this app and you could go into the Museum of Other Realities. You could interact with all the other people and you could see the artworks. And so we try to make it as accessible as possible. And as I said before, for us, the exhibition design is super important. So we replicated, as you see in the first picture, our whole venue that we have in Hamburg, this old train track station. We had an area where all the live events could take place with a stage, with a screen in the back, so we could actually screen content, videos, and presentations into there, and had all the live events there. And in addition, we had a complete museum. You see it on the second part. That's one of the rooms that we created where all the artworks were accessible, so you could just jump into that experience and see the artwork inside the museum. And as I said, we had those live events like an opening. We have the VRHAM Awards with the jury that gives out an award. And here you see in the first picture how one of these actually looked. But also we had live events that took place in Hamburg at our festival venue that we then live streamed into the virtual venue. So people all over the world could just go inside the Museum of Other Realities and see what was happening in Hamburg live at that moment. Quite complicated and quite a lot of technology, but it was a very interesting experiment. Yes, so that was VRHAM Festival 2020, and I'm just going to give you a little look into what that looked like in a video. Yeah, that was VRHAM Festival 2020, and now we are starting to prepare for VRHAM Festival 2021. We're in the middle of preparing, obviously, and we are planning for a hybrid version. We're going to have our complete virtual version like we did last year, with all of the artworks accessible. We are looking at different access points even to make it easier to participate in the festival, so stay tuned. And we're also hoping for a small exhibition inside our venue in Hamburg, so people can actually see the artworks in a beautiful installation inside our location in Hamburg. So stay tuned. The festival is from the 4th until the 12th of June, and do follow us and get the newest updates. So I wanted to talk a little about how creators and artists in the XR space can enter the festival market. What are access points to get your newest creation, or maybe your first one that you've ever worked on, inside the festival market? So one of the access points definitely are open calls. Most of the festivals have open calls during the year. Check their websites, follow them, so you're actually always informed what's going to happen. You can submit your artworks to these open calls. Most of them have very different, are asking for different content. Some are more interested in VR artworks. Others have a stronger focus on augmented reality. Some have a strong focus on 360 films. Also, the artistic backgrounds sometimes are very different what they're looking for. So check them out and submit your artworks to these open calls. A second one, very interesting, and especially if you're still in the creation of your artwork, are pitching sessions. A lot of the festivals, but also funds and co-production markets have pitching sessions, so you can actually showcase your work or your idea that you're working on, your team, your visual material, to investors or curators from festivals. And try to find teams that you can work with, find a financier, find producers that actually work with you, or distributors that might be interested in your artwork. The third ones are co-production markets, which can be super helpful because a lot of the artworks only exist because of co-productions. VR artworks are mostly very, very expensive to produce and to get out there. So it's a good idea to co-produce together with other producers, with producing companies, with studios, or with distributors. And these co-production markets can help you get your creative idea out there and find the right partners for your project. Most of the very big festivals have these co-production markets, like Venice has a huge one, CPH Docs, also Stereopsia, a lot of them, so check that out. And I think that's really, really helpful to apply for being part of these co-production markets. And the fourth one are residencies or workshops. Many of the festivals give out residencies or smaller workshops in the course of their festivals, so you can actually work on your creative idea, get feedback, work with mentors, work with professionals, meet other creators. A lot of these residencies are done virtually at the moment. Normally they take place hybrid or physically, but they're a very good possibility to get new input for your work and further development your work. So getting your work out is the one thing, but actually to exhibit it and to make it being shown at festivals can be quite challenging. And I just want to talk about a few of the challenges and obstacles that could arise. So one, technical challenges. Of course, the technology can be quite difficult to handle, and so really make sure you're on top of the technology you use. So really know on what engines does it run, what technical capabilities does it need, what kind of virtual reality device or augmented reality device, etc. does it need, and really make sure with the festivals that you exhibit to make sure everything's at the highest standard that you actually need to exhibit at. Secondly, financial challenges. Obviously, to exhibit VR artwork and especially to produce it can be very costly. So sometimes there are challenges, especially if you have a stronger physical installation that you look at, which could also lead to questions of accessibility. So how many people can see your artwork at the same time? It should always be something that you think about in the creation. How will visitors actually see my artwork? Is it a virtual access point? Is it physical? Does it need this physical access? How many people at the same time can see it? Already think about, in case of a physical installation, how would you make the accessibility? And lastly, the team size. If it's a physical installation, really think about how many people do actually need to travel. A lot of the XR festivals are not that well funded yet, so it might be quite challenging to bring large teams. So all of these things, really keep them in mind from the beginning or throughout the process of your creation, and think about how this sums up. And a few words maybe on how to exhibit XR works, because it's been a very, very interesting shift over the last few years that I've seen. And I just want to give you also some ideas to think about when you think about how to exhibit or how to create your artwork. Already think about the sort of physical or virtual exhibition. So like we almost know, the physical exhibitions that take place in either museums, gallery spaces, or in festivals, you really have a physical structure that often enhances the artwork. This is something that we've done at Bram Festival quite a lot. So you actually interact with the physical space in order to see the virtual artwork. And it needs quite a lot of installments. It needs technicians. You really have to think about how to set this up. How can people experience it the best way, that they're not disturbed maybe by other people, etc. So that was the full physical festival and gallery museum exhibition kind of thing. Then we shifted to virtual through the last year, as I just said before. So we have complete virtual settings and a very interesting thought around this that we've also explored a lot at Bram Festival is, how do I contextualize the piece, the artwork, or the experience that I showcase? How can I make it even stronger than it actually is from in the artwork itself? How can I help people understand even from before what how do I have to think about it? What info do they need? How does the space that surrounds it in the virtual world look like? And we had some very, very interesting examples and also conversations with artists, how they wanted their artworks to appear in the virtual space. And lastly, now it's a very interesting time to look at hybrid installations. So how do we make a physical and a virtual setting really be combined, and how can they foster each other? How can they can they make them each other stronger in the exhibition? And I think this is a super exciting time to be curating these festivals and exhibitions and think about access points and installations. A short summary, what have we talked about today? So we talked about festivals. What kind of festivals do we have? What are the access points? What are the technologies? What are the devices? What are obstacles and difficulties? We talked about some recent and upcoming festivals. How did COVID actually impact the festivals? Also something every creator has to keep in mind at the moment. There's something or like a hint I want to give at that point as well. Always think about these different access points and not only about the installation, but also about virtual accessibility. And especially high-end interactive VR artworks are quite complicated to exhibit in a virtual space and make it accessible, because not so many people have these headsets yet. So always, please, please, please keep thinking also about these people who want to understand or see your artwork, and think about maybe a 360 version or another possibility, like a curated tour around your artwork, or other kinds of communication. So please bear that in mind. So this is what we also talked about. I told you a little about Bram Festival from last year, about what we are up to. And then we talked about how to enter the XR festival world, different access points like open calls, residencies, co-production markets, etc. And also talked a little about new ways how to exhibit XR works in festivals and museum and gallery spaces. And now I've talked a lot. I hope it was understandable and of some practical value. And now I'm very much looking forward if you have a few questions that we can answer today. I just see some questions in the chat. So first of all, Ava asked, what are the deadlines of submissions to your festival and how to send the VR project? So for our festival in Hamburg, this is very different for different festivals. For our festival, we had our open call for the artistic program. We started that in January and it ran through end of March. So we had approximately 2 months for that. And we do this via a submission tool, and people could submit their artworks through like online, like this submission tool, and then also upload the experience. So we really want to see the artworks, we download then the experience, we install it in our devices. So we really see the VR XR pieces. And this is how it was possible to send a VR project. And then there's a question, using which technology do you make the project virtually? I think that might refer to the festival, the VRHAM festival last year. So the technology that we used, obviously, was VR devices. We had to use tethered headsets like the ones with the cable because we needed this very strong calculating power from the PCs. But the accessibility was also through much easier devices like an Oculus Quest. But to build the whole world, we needed this very strong headsets with a tethered device. Now I'm looking at the same time at all of the questions. From Olga, are there some workshops, art residency for those who just started discovering working with VR? Could you name a few? Yeah, there are quite a few. I mean, I just start with the ones that I'm involved with. For example, we have just announced a few weeks ago residencies for artists working in the field of performance. We have a very strong focus on theater, dance, performance this year with our festival. We got supported by the German government to really look into how theater makers can actually use XR technologies for their artworks. So it's really for beginners or people who are just working on their first projects. And we do this in cooperation with an amazing arts institution in Tübingen in the south of Germany, the ITZ. And we have 2 residencies there where creators can work on their project and then showcase it through Bram Festival. The deadline was last Sunday, so we're a little late for applying still, but we have residencies every year. Other arts institutions, for example, Espronceda in Barcelona, always has very, very beautiful possibilities to work in residencies, in guided programs. Another institution that does a lot of residencies and development of projects, obviously, is Creative XR in London. This is dedicated to different kinds. It's probably not dedicated to very, very beginners, but it's interesting to follow that and to see if you're already working on a piece, because they really mentor and develop your project. They also give some money to invest in the projects. The same does Venice VR, the Venice Film Festival. They have this complete lab working on or working with creators and also giving out some money so they really can work on the pieces. The same does CPH Docs Festival in Copenhagen. But also, for example, Sundance, Rebecca, they all have these smaller labs. But if you're really a beginner and have never worked with VR, to be quite honest, it's really helpful to look at some tutorials online. That is amazing what you can build in very easy tools, and then you can start to make the first steps. And out of this often comes some workshops really for beginners. So you really get an idea and the hang of different tools. One tool that I want to advise on is Mozilla Hubs. Just Google it briefly. It's very accessible. You can access it through a browser, but it is a 3D room, and it's very, very easy to get started if you're starting to work on VR, to build your own rooms, to then look at this in 3D, and you could see it in the welcoming words here from Doku Days. That was actually done in Mozilla Hubs. So you see these rooms you can actually create, and you see these avatars, and you can interact with other people. So it's an easy and very nice possibility to start with VR and get a first glimpse. Yes, these were the questions in the chat. I'm not quite sure if someone else here inside
I want to ask you.
Yes, please.
I want to ask you about the best installation, physical installation, and the best VR experience which you saw at festival at all.
That's a very, very difficult and mean question, but I'm trying to name a few. I've seen very, very interesting and beautiful exhibitions. Maybe one that has touched me very much was a piece that was presented also in our Bram Festival last year and won the jury prize, the VRHAM award. It's called The Key by Celine Trickard. And it's a piece about refugees, about losing your own home, but not losing your faith. And it's a very powerful and very strong, impactful story. And not only is the VR piece itself super beautiful and very poetic, they had this beautiful installation at the Venice Film Festival 2 years ago, where they had a dedicated room with a performer. So it was one of these performative installations that I talked about earlier. And it was a person of color who greeted you. You go inside the room. This person didn't talk to you. She gave you a key. This is why it's called The Key. And you then could experience the artwork. And this room was specifically made to really experience the artwork in the best way. And after you took off your headset, you understood why this person greeted you and what their story is. I don't want to take away anything from the experience, but that was very, very interesting and powerful. Another one I want to name, maybe because it comes really from a more visual arts background, and I think it's one of the strongest physical installations I've seen, is an artwork called by Mary Sebond. It's called Crescendo of Ecstasy, and it consists of 4 different 360 films, basically, that she has done in the style of her artistic language. She is an artist. She's working with textiles and fabrics. So she's doing these huge installations, these oversized installations with clothes, with very beautiful garments, and she incorporated this in the physical installation. So you actually had this physical layout with a lot of beautiful lighting, very strong set design, and the artworks replicated this in the purest sense. So this is what I said about contextualization earlier. It really gave another meaning and another layer to this already very beautiful artwork, being inside the physical space with this physical objects of this visual artist. So maybe these are 2 very different but very interesting pieces.
And where we can find the interesting VR experience in the internet?
I mean, those 2 experiences I just said, you can just Google them. It's called The Key by Celine Trickard. You can actually already see it on Oculus Store. So if you have an Oculus Quest, for example, or another VR device, you can just Google it and then have a look at it. The Mary Sebond piece is more of an arts installation, so you can also just Google it and have a look at it. You can just go on to VRHAM Festival website, and there you have the archive, and those pieces were in our program last year, so you can have a look at it and read about it if you want.
Which platform do you recommend to searching and reach experiences? I know AltVR, Mozilla Hubs, maybe something else.
Yeah, they're very, very different platforms, and it really depends on what you want to do with this. I mean, if you just want to see artworks, it's probably easier. But if you want to have this social VR platform, like we talked before, where you actually also interact with other people, and you can see other people and see events and live performances. I think the most used ones basically are VR Chat. So the one that I talked about from South by Southwest Festival, also Venice Festival used it last year. But also Old Space VR is something that a lot of people use. The Museum of Other Realities, the one that I talked about earlier, very beautiful installations. It's very accessible, and you can see all of the artworks there. I think these are some of these social VR platforms. We, for my festivals, the festival that I did in London, the LFF Expanded Festival last year, and also now for the upcoming VRHAM Festival, we use our own platform. So we build our own platform with our partner in VR space. It's a studio, a VR studio in Berlin, and they have built their own VR platform. And for me, this is especially interesting because in this platform, you can integrate all of the VR artworks directly. So you don't need to go to other platforms, so out of this social moment, but you can stand next to someone, talk to him, and then you can jump into the experience. It's really like you would do in a museum or in a gallery. This is one of the many advantages of this platform, and we are building this as we speak, and we'll get more info on this very soon.
We start to making some VR films, as you know, and this border between game and art, where you do this border. And I think the mainly VR experience is a game because you feel it like a game. So what is the future of this? Maybe this question.
Yeah. I would say it's very subjective to distinguish between game and art, and I don't think it's actually necessary. There are quite a few festivals that actually focus on games as an art form, and there are amazing coders and developers who are working on these beautiful VR games, but they always have game mechanics behind it. And a lot of the artworks that I'm talking about don't. So it's really more contemplative. It's really more about the visual art context, or it's about the storyline that you want to tell. So look at the performing arts, theater makers, etc. They have a very different approach to storytelling and the stories that they want to tell. And a lot of the artworks, there's not an end game. So there's not anything to achieve. And this is always with a game, you need to be the best, you need to be the fastest, you need the most points. With most artworks, this is really not what it's about. It's about altering the state of mind, about changing the perspective. This is what VR art can do in the best sense. You can shift your own perspective. You can look at an artwork or a situation completely different from what you experience it if you yourself are in it. So for example, if a VR artwork puts you in the shoes of someone else, in the shoes of someone that's really different from you, you start to understand how this person might feel. And a lot of the artworks that I'm super interested in does exactly that. They give you a shift of your own perspective, and art is always about the social moment, and it's about political, social consequences, and also very personal stories. And it has to have a relevance. And a lot of the games probably have as well, but I don't think it's the focus so much. But artists working in XR, they really want to change the way we perceive our environment and perceive the world, and they want to make an impact on the visitor and tell their very personal and poetic stories. So I think we don't always have to distinguish, but it's a blurry border between, but I think this is one of the main points that I would know.
The big festival want to see the teaser when we apply our project, but when we development our project, we haven't a teaser. Which visual materials can apply to this festival? Maybe what photo allocations, photo heroes, what?
Yeah, I mean, what you always need in order to apply somewhere, even for the beginning of the funding, you need a pitch deck, something that really visually enticing, tells what is this project about, who are the team producers, the collaborators, what's the visual background. It can be a mood board basically, but so you understand where this project is going. For most of the festivals that I know, and this is also the way that I'm working, I would never invite something that I haven't seen myself. I always want to see at least a prototype, or want to see better even the final experience. This is why we also curate on quite a narrow time frame towards our festival. So I don't want to curate already, let's say in December, because a lot of things are not finished by then. So this is why we're curating the festival program right now for our June edition. But of course, with curators or artists that we know, if they're working on something new, and I've been working with them before, it's often enough to see a prototype or to see where they're actually going with this piece. But for me, it's always super important to see really visually, how is this going to look like, and how can I interact with this? How are the mechanics working, and what story does this artwork telling?
I have one more question about your festival. Have you like festival psychologist maybe?
Say again, how do you mean? What?
When people first going on helmet, they need some support.
Ah, okay. No, we don't. No, we don't have a psychologist. We have really great guides that help all the visitors. And so this is, I think I said it before, it's super important for us that we grab the people where they are. So some of them have used VR before and they're super easy, and then we just say, okay, here, enjoy your time. Other people are very insecure and they need a lot of guidance. And so we really take it from the beginning. We really show them how the technology works. They don't have to be afraid. It's not going to hurt them and they're not going to break it, and make it very, very easy and very accessible. And also, we are always around and seeing if someone might have a bad experience or something is not working. We always get back to them. And sometimes when they get out of the headset, either they're super overwhelmed. They say, oh my God, that's the best thing I've ever seen. Or sometimes maybe they say, oh my God, this was really dark, or I felt a little frightened. Then we can just talk to them. And but we never had the feeling we really need a psychologist. But it's an interesting thought, I think, about it.
We have some experience with children, and they tell, oh no, I can't, and then you put it out, and then they tell, oh no, please come back.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we're very strict with this in our festival. We have certain pieces in our curation that also kids could see. They always have to be accompanied by their parents, so they really have guidance there. We have a strong age limit from 13, so under this, you're not allowed to see this alone, and really are very careful what experiences we actually show kids. We just have another question. It's asking, what's the longest experience to date? And do you think VR experiences with the same length as movies, 1 hour, an hour and a half, or even 2? Well, to the first question, the longest experience, that's a really tricky question, because often it really depends also on how you interact with this. But some of them are more than half an hour. But I personally don't think that a VR experience needs to be the length of a VR movie. First of all, the technology is not at that date, so it's still not as comfortable as just sitting on your sofa and watching a movie or sitting in the cinema. And you need some breaks, especially if you're unexperienced, so you might want to take it off and take it on again. And the level of interaction and the level of visual stimulation is so much more complex and demanding than it is with a 2D experience, that I think an experience should not be 30 minutes, I think, is really maximum. In our festival, we mostly aim between 15, 20 minutes. That's often like a very good point. Some of them are just like 5, 6 minutes, which are more of a short narrative exploration or visual arts piece. So it really depends on the art form also that we look at. So if it's really more of a documentary or a narrative film, then sometimes they're a little longer. But I don't think they actually need to be that long because you have another experience. It's different, for example, if you have a VR performance, like a theater performance or something like this. So if there are other elements to this, let's say you start in a VR headset, then you go out of it, you have a physical component, then you go back into the VR device, that can be much longer. Yeah, so that's this.
What's the most interesting interactive element you have seen?
Very interesting interactive element is, for example, a few experience work with breath visualization. So it actually understands how fast you breathe or how strong you breathe, and then you can visually impact everything that's around you in the VR experience. Or a lot of people are starting to work with sensorial trackers. So it's actually tracking how warm you are or how your heart rate is going. And something that's getting more and more used in experiences is the hand tracking. So you can actually, you don't need the controllers anymore. You can actually interact with your hands just like that. And that makes it so much more easy and accessible and less clunky in a way. So I think these are interactions that are really helpful. Good.
Using VR experience at the Germany school or university.
Sorry, come again?
Using VR experience at the Germany school or at the university. Do you know about it?
Not so much. I mean, for studying, etc., I think it's more and more used. All kinds of virtual devices. It doesn't have to be VR, but also other technologies. In art universities, it's coming more and more. It started more in film universities. Obviously, they started to experiment with 360 films, etc. But a lot of art schools and universities understand that there's this new art form coming up. It's not game anymore, and it's not just a technology. It's really a new medium, a new art form that's evolving. And so they start to invite lecturers that talk about this. They then start to invest into the technology and give coding lessons, etc. So it's starting, but I think some other countries are much more advanced in that than Germany is at that moment. So we really have to get in the gear there.
Not Ukraine, not Ukraine.
Yeah, great. I think we had a lot of questions, and I think we covered really a lot of different things today. Thank you very much for the invitation again. It's been a pleasure and an honor, and I hope it was understandable what I was talking about. And I wish you all happy Easter and a great Saturday today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ulrich. Bye. Goodbye.
See you.
I see you. Yeah.